Hi, this is Nick Termini bringing you the Kansas City Business Spotlight. We're with Action Coach in North Kansas City. Today we've brought on Jon. Hey, Jon, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, Nick? I'm Jon Ruiz from EB Systems. I'm the CEO and co-founder.
Great. Well, thank you. Jon, thanks for joining us today. And if you could, tell us a little bit about how you got started with EB Systems.
So it's been a long road. So I've technically been working on EB Systems for almost 8 years now. So the first couple of years were in college. So really my story as an entrepreneur, if we want to go back to the early origins, was actually my freshman year of college. I was in the journalism school at Mizzou. And if you know anything about that, it's pretty good journalism school. And so I was excited about the prospect of being a journalist and getting into that industry. However, it was the first day of class, and I remember the professor was talking about average salaries on graduation for journalists. And so he was saying, for an average journalism school across the country, the graduating salary is roughly $25,000 a year. And then all the kids started booing and all that. And then he said, but the average Mizzou journalist graduate averages roughly $28,000 to $30,000 a year. And everyone started cheering. And I remember sitting back like, man, I don't know about this. Like, I like writing. However, I want to be rich is what I thought, as like an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And so from there, it just kind of got in my head that I wanted to work for myself and start my own thing. So I went back to my dorm room and I tried brainstorming ideas. I started, trying to do blogs, trying to do the journalism thing on my own, that sort of thing. I tried to do various inventions. I remember I had this dumb idea where, in the dorm room, I was eating a lot of ramen and things like that. And I was using Tupperware and it was so dirty. So I had an idea to make Tupperware with peelable layers. So you could just peel off the layers without having to clean them. So super stupid. And I went through the process of like calling 1-800-inventor hotline or whatever. And I went through that whole process of trying to get it patented or whatever, just getting information. And I learned my first lesson. I talked to this person and they're like, all right, Jon, we can help you, but it's going to cost $20,000 to get this started. I was 18 and I just learned my first lesson in entrepreneurship, that they were selling me something versus me selling them something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
so
everything,
you always had the entrepreneurial spirit, so it sounds like.
absolutely, man. So really since then, it's just been me having random ideas with friends or my roommate trying to get things off the ground. We did random t-shirt businesses and, just like random little blogs and trying to do affiliate marketing, that sort of thing. And really where it stuck for me was coming back to Kansas City and getting interested in technology. It was a few years ago that Google chose KC as the first city to get Google Fiber, the high-speed internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it caused a lot of interest in technology in general here in KC. And so I decided to move back when I learned that UMKC had one of the top entrepreneurship programs in the country, just randomly, my hometown. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I came back, joined the program, started teaching myself how to code and make apps and things like that. And from there at UMKC for the last 2 years of my degree in the Entrepreneurship Scholars Program, I was working on this concept, trying to develop my first app, and then it started from there.
And what was your first app?
So the first app, or the first iteration of the company, was, so the app is called eBeacons, and it's still called that today. However, when I first started, it was a safety app for students. So if they're in trouble on campus, they could send their GPS location with a button on an app to campus police. And so that was the first iteration. However, I learned quickly how hard it was to sell into universities, how much liability there is behind a lot of this. And so through the entrepreneurship program at UMKC, one of my mentors was actually an owner of a private security guard firm here in Kansas City. And so he liked the idea. However, he thought it would be more valuable for the actual security officers themselves versus the potential victims or the people that needed help. So we repurposed the app for private security guard companies where they could not only GPS track their vehicles, send reports from the field, incident reports, but where I really started getting a lot of interest was around sensors and Bluetooth technology. And so we actually integrated the use of these sensors called Bluetooth beacons, and they work via proximity. So if you get close enough to it with a mobile app, you can trigger a function or you can trigger some sort of message. And so for private security, this was important for them because, you know, GPS is readily available. You know, it's pretty run of the mill when it comes to workforce management, but using our beacon sensors, I actually have one right here. Using our beacon sensors, we could put these around buildings and do indoor tracking systems as well as proximity alerts. So if an officer got close to a back door, we can send an alert to his phone saying, hey, it's past 5 p.m. Make sure that the back door is locked and things of that nature. And so that's where we started getting a lot of traction, was in private security, creating these indoor patrol monitoring systems.
That's awesome. So is that the niche that you've stayed in, or have you guys grown beyond the private security sector?
So it's interesting. We scaled in private security. Then we started working with a lot of organizations called community improvement districts. Okay. So one of our biggest clients is the Downtown Council of Kansas City. If you've ever been downtown, you'll notice that there's guys running around in yellow jackets. They call them like the downtown bumblebees. They're actually the downtown ambassadors. And there's about 50 of those guys or more actually now, just because downtown is just growing so crazy. And they use our app for not only workforce management and some of the things we talked about, but it's all about data collection. You know, these improvement districts hire security officers, landscapers, maintenance workers, and what we allow them to do is log their activities in the field, and then we can do analytics on how much impact they're actually having on downtown. So we're working with a couple of those organizations here in town, but really what's really driving the business right now is the use of our beacon and sensor technology. Okay. So we actually developed, basically, we were honestly one of the first companies using this type of technology in mobile apps. And it led for us to develop our own beacon sensor. So what I described to you before requires a stationary sensor, this Bluetooth beacon, and a mobile smartphone to come into contact. Essentially what we've developed is a way to basically cut the app out of the equation. Okay. Now we're relying on a stationary smart device that we call a beacon reader, and then a mobile Bluetooth device or wearable. Here's a beacon badge is one of the devices that we use. Mm-hmm. And essentially it cuts the app out of the equation. Now all you have to do is hand one of your employees one of these wearable devices, and now we have the indoor tracking system. We can do automatic clock ins, clock outs. And really what our main traction recently has been is with industrial type companies, think processing facilities, construction companies, as well as agriculture, like fields and crops and things of that nature. The main traction from them is actually worker safety. So those are high risk work environments, whether it be construction facilities or out in the crops. And actually a recent project we did was with the seed processing facility in Iowa, where they didn't have a good way of accounting for workers during weather emergencies, whether it be a tornado or a dust storm. And so we deployed a system of 22 beacon readers and equipped 130 employees with our wearable beacon badges. Yeah. And we did various evacuation drills, fire drills, evacuation drills. And with our system, they can designate certain areas as safe and unsafe zones. So we're able to tell them who all made it to the safe areas, and then also do analytics on what paths they took throughout the facilities, throughout the fields to get to the evacuation zone, how long it took them to get there. So now they can do predictive analysis on where to direct people during evacuations. What's the quickest route? How can we get everyone to safety in the fastest amount of time?
Incredible technology, Jon.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
And so what differentiates you guys, EB Systems, from your competition?
So one of the main differentiators is us using Bluetooth. So if you look back here, I actually have a patent that we got that my
Nice.
team and I did around using the technology that we developed, specifically Bluetooth, to create these connected environments, whether it be in a city or in a processing facility. And the reason why we like Bluetooth so much is, there's other technologies you might be familiar with, like RFID, what you use to swipe a building when you're trying to gain entry, or a parking garage pass, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's really good for near field communication. So opening a door, or a swipe to check in. However, the key is near field, so you have to get really close, honestly touching the reader to activate something.
Okay.
And then there's other technology called ultra wideband or LoRaWAN, which is more for long range tracking.
Yeah.
And the issue with that is there's some bandwidth limitations as far as how quickly you can send information. So you can't necessarily do quote unquote real time tracking. So with Bluetooth, we have a nice middle ground. It has higher range, in some cases up to 300 feet. So we can cover bases and make it more automated. Someone doesn't have to pass under a door or swipe something to start collecting data.
Yeah.
But there's also, Bluetooth is so widely used. There's a lot of applications for us to get that real-time communication. And so when we're talking about this emergency management, all clear during an emergency, that needs to be near or almost real time to be effective, just for safety purposes. So that's why we like Bluetooth, and it's cost effective. It allows,
yeah.
it allows people to really take advantage of the sensor technology and what the industry is technically called is the Internet of Things. And it allows people to take advantage of it, but not revamp their entire workflow or invest, a ton of money to start taking advantage of some of this tech.
That's incredible. So who's been your greatest mentors as you've gotten started? Like, when we look at, our business coaching firm and the clients that we work with, usually they have someone challenging them to help grow and innovate, like sounds like you have. Who's been your biggest mentor throughout building your company and continuing to innovate?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of opportunity to be a part of programs like the UMKC Scholars. We've also been a part of accelerators. We were actually in Black and Veatch's COVID-19 accelerator, where we worked with them to basically augment our indoor tracking system to do contact tracing and social distance monitoring. Okay. And so that allowed us to make it through COVID and really see how we can survive, different scenarios, completely locking down businesses where, if like businesses were closed, security guards weren't on site because it was closed, right? So yeah. They really challenged us to, rise to the occasion with COVID. And, that was a great opportunity because we worked with Sporting Kansas City and deployed our system at their training facility. That's incredible. So we helped them during the playoffs identify potential super spreader risks. So that was fun. And so, wow, outside of these, dedicated educational programs, one of our founding partners, his name is Bill Waters, and he's actually the father of my co-founder, Brendan Waters. Okay. He was great because he was one of the, he was on the early team of Cerner. So he's got 30 years experience as an engineer, as well as a business development manager within Cerner. So he brought that experience. And then, for the first part of his career, he was an engineer, but then he was a high level executive for the past, 15, 20 years. However, I got him to dust his brain off, and me and him actually coded the first version of our application. And so that was fun for him to kind of get back to where it all started, doing programming. And along the way, he's really been able to be an asset, not only at the beginning, but also as we start working with these large corporations. He has the experience dealing with huge billion-dollar companies where we're recently starting to get interest from as pieces of the puzzle solution to bigger technology workflows that they're already using. So he's really been integral in not only working on the technology piece, but also the contracts and negotiations. I joke that my co-founder, Brendan, he essentially went to law school dealing with some of these contracts and service agreements that we're getting from some of these large, huge corporations. So it's been quite the learning experience.
So, Jon, you were talking about some of the mentors that you've had along the way in getting EB Systems up and rolling. And you also mentioned through COVID, like opportunities that have come about through COVID. How has EB Systems evolved through COVID and from experiences, that created?
Yeah, so it really was an interesting time for our company, mainly because right before COVID, we were getting traction from industrial companies like construction and processing facilities. And then we also did a really cool project during the Chiefs Super Bowl parade, where we deployed our technology downtown to passively scan for cell phones, to estimate crowd size, but also equipping security personnel with our wearable devices to give them another layer of real-time communication. And so after that, we got a lot of interest from events, big events that were interested in attendance tracking, personnel tracking, getting data on where crowds are going throughout the event. And if you remember, the Super Bowl was literally 2 weeks before the entire world shut down. So
it was, and the parade was a couple of weeks before that. Yeah,
absolutely. So we were slated to do all kinds of cool stuff with marathons and big conferences, and then COVID hit. And so fortunately, we were able to work with Black & Veatch and their COVID-19 response team to do contact tracing development with our wearable tracking technology. And so it was great because, as I mentioned, we did project with Sporting Kansas City, where we also did some projects with St. Luke's and other health facilities. However, as COVID rolled along and vaccines started coming out, I guess we didn't anticipate that the vaccine rollout would have happened as fast as it did.
Yeah.
So we were talking to other Major League Soccer teams, and they were all on board with replicating the system that we had for Sporting Kansas City. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the players all got vaccinated fairly quickly. I remember the NBA, NFL, they're all saying, oh, we're not going to jump the vaccination line. We're going to do it like everyone else. But coincidentally, they all got vaccinated within the next couple of weeks. But this sort of challenged us to pivot and re-pivot back to our pre-COVID-19 focus. And I'm glad that we partnered with Black & Veatch during that time, because it did help us get a lot of exposure. And specifically, with Black & Veatch, they're $1 billion company, organization, and it helped give us the experience working with those large orgs that had a ton of technology and workflows in place, and it allowed us to really see how we could fit into their greater scheme. Because, during their COVID-19 program, we were just a tiny piece of the puzzle. They had, testing solutions, disinfectant. They had all kinds of different, vaccination stations that they put together as this big COVID package. And so our piece was just a little piece of the puzzle, but that sort of inspired us to keep working on these types of solutions. Before, we were going into these construction companies, for example, and saying, we're going to revolutionize your entire workflow. We're going to connect your whole work site. We're going to do X, Y, Z. But now we saw the value of saying, okay, you're already using this worksite management software. You're already using this timekeeping software. With us as an integration piece, we can fit into that technology workflow and start adding more value to what you're already paying for as a piece of the puzzle. And so that really allowed us to keep growing after COVID and really find our niche as an integration partner with some of these larger organizations.
That's awesome. And so how do you challenge yourself to continue to grow as a business owner and a business leader? Like what are things that you've done, as your company's taken off and overcome these different challenges. As you look ahead, what are things you're doing to continue to grow?
Yeah, so we're a very lean team, technically only two full-time members with about 10 part-time people that we work with, on a project to project basis. And so that strategy has worked for us up until this point. So we're 100% owner operated, we're profitable, we're cash flow positive, and we're doing a lot of things right. But as we look at our growth projections and strategy for the next couple of years, we realize that, you can only remain lean for so long. And so what we've started to do now is explore more opportunities either with full-time partnerships or full-time employees. We've been really smart about partnering with other companies to help offset some of the workload that we experience because, I myself, I'm the main technology person, engineer of the company, but luckily we have partners that can help me out and do have an invested interest in the company to help us grow. And then, recently I've been able to take a step back and we've been fortunate enough to hire some of these contractors. So it's given me the opportunity to start working on the business versus in the business. And so we've been applying for all kinds of partnerships, grants, incubators, things of that nature. And we recently just got a grant from Launch Kansas City, which is a program from the downtown council. And not only does it give us $50,000 in a cash non-dilutable grant, but we're also getting a bunch of resources like legal, accounting, office space, a lot of stuff that's going to help us really keep on our growth trajectory.
It's incredible. I mean, that's what, with our business coaching firm, a lot of the local businesses we work with, the challenges that they face are growth related, right? So start out as a great practitioner or whatever it is that you're passionate about. And as you grow and add team members, finding ways to grow as a business owner to be able to lead your organization and have all the proper systems is where a lot of challenges we see come in. So it sounds like you guys are finding different ways to navigate that and continue to grow, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Well, Jon, is there anything inspirational or looking at your experience that would be good to share with, future business owners? If you could look back and give yourself, 18 years old, certain advice, what would that be?
I would definitely say be patient. That's the main thing. I think a lot of misconceptions about entrepreneurship come from people thinking it's going to be overnight success. You're going to immediately experience, immediate success and growth. And, technically we've been in business upwards of 8 years. It took a few years in the beginning while I was in college trying to get things off the ground, learning how to program. So we didn't have to get a bunch of investors to hire programmers and things of that nature. So I would say, be patient and keep learning. At the beginning, when I was 19, 20 years old, we actually had an offer for a $250,000 investment. And me and my co-founder looked at it. We looked at the terms and they wanted a bunch of equity and royalties and things like that. And we realized that if we took this deal, we may not survive the next couple of years based on like the growth and things like that. And so that pushed me to get more invested in learning how to program and do some of the things that we were trying to raise money for on our own. And so that's sort of been our theme is, okay, this marketing company wants to charge us like 50,000 for branding or something like that. Okay, can I learn how to do some of this stuff on my own? Or with the patent, lawyers wanted to charge us like $30,000 to write and do research. So me and my business partner actually drove down to Dallas, which is the nearest patent office, and crashed on one of our buddies' couches for a week while we went to the patent office every day to do research and take notes. And I actually wrote the first draft of the patent myself, and my partners, they helped edit and all that. And so when we served it to the lawyer, all those fees they started at like 30,000 and we ended up only having to spend like four to $5,000 to file it and actually get it. And we did something right because we got it. So
incredible, man. So it's just find a way and make things happen is what I'm hearing here.
absolutely, absolutely. And to those people who are specifically starting tech companies, if you heard our strategy 8 years ago, they probably would have said that we were, dumb or like risk averse, because the trend was raise a bunch of money and figure it out later, right? And that was been the trend in technology in Silicon Valley. But as you see recently with how the economy is going and some of these investments that are really blowing up and a lot of these high tech spaces, now the trend is back towards, okay, instead of investing a bunch of money in pre-revenue companies, companies that are going to be running at a loss for years, not generating any revenue, or in some cases don't even have a product that's built yet. Now the trend is, are you actually making money? Are you profitable? Is there a growth strategy? And we've really set ourselves up nicely, being owner operated. We didn't give away a bunch of equity right off the bat. Now, it took a little while. We didn't grow as fast as some of these companies. However, the table is really set for us to continue on our growth path or raise capital if needed, if we do need to execute on some more high growth opportunities.
Jon, this is incredible. Thank you for joining us today, and excited for the local, business owner community to be able to hear your story and to be able to hear how EB Systems has taken off. You guys have provided and created some incredible opportunities, and I'm just excited to get this out to our network. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, man. And thanks for reaching out. You're helping me get a jump start on my New Year's resolutions. I told you that one of the things that we haven't been doing well, or myself personally, is getting out there, talking about the business, telling my story. So the opportunity to get out there and start sharing some of the things I've learned, is really important, and it all helps grow. You realize that too as well. It's not about promoting yourself. It's just more about creating that connection with other people, and hopefully it resonates with people and it helps someone on their entrepreneurial journey, or it helps us connect with potential clients or users that hear our story and are interested in our technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome to have you on, and I think that a lot of other people will share your perspective as well, that together we can accomplish more.
Absolutely, man.